Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this very special broadcast. You all know what is happening in Pakistan. Hamid Mir has been taken off a show. His regular show, which he's been doing for a very, very long time. And then Hamid Mir chooses to write in an Indian publication, which sets the cat amongst the pigeons in Pakistan. I have 4 guests with me, 2 from India and 2 from Pakistan, and we're going to discuss this issue threadbare. I have Sushant Sareen, who's a senior fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. I have NC Bipindra, editor, Defense Capital Magazine. I have Kamar Chima, strategic affairs and defense analyst. And I have Mona Alam, a political analyst. A very, very warm welcome to all of you. Let's start off with Kamar Chima here. Kamar Chima, this issue about journalists being under threat in Pakistan, this is not the first time that Hamid Mir's show Capital Talk, and even before that has been taken off air. This is not the first time somebody's been attacked. We know about Hamid Mir getting shot. We also know about how Matiullah Jan was picked up and released after 2 or 3 days. Then about this young blogger, Toor, who was again manhandled and very badly beaten up. Things don't seem to be right in Pakistan. There is this issue in Pakistan that if you talk about the army, there is going to be a physical pushback. Somebody will come and shoot you. Somebody will come and beat you up or something like that. What do you have to say about that, Kamar Chima?
Well, thank you very much, Major Saab. I think first of all, if we just look at the global standards, I think the World Press Freedom Index has put Pakistan at 145th position, and India has been put at 142nd position out of 180 countries. So India being the largest democracy on earth, so-called largest democracy, you are not just away from us. We are just closer as far as the Global Freedom Index is concerned. We are being targeted since you are saying that the military is pressurizing and military is forcing. I think we have an independent media. People are talking whatever they want to talk from 7 p.m. till 11 p.m. at night. Everybody is talking about establishment, and they are naming whatever they want to say. Nobody stops them. So don't say about that about Hamid Mir. And don't forget, sir, who is Arnab Goswami, your own boss, the owner of this channel maybe. He was put behind bars by the Mumbai police. So what kind of a journalism you are talking? And how many other journalists, I have to tell you, more than 400 cases of sedition were leveled against the journalist after 2014, since Prime Minister Modi came in office. Just in 2020, more than 200 journalists were arrested, and 76 journalists were manhandled by the police, and the political parties are doing this. So in Pakistan, the government is allowing people to talk, people can write, but yes, there is a limitation. If you target Pakistan's military without any evidence, you are target Pakistani military and trying to bring. Don't forget who is military. They have saved this country from the terrorism, the lives which the military has given. What they are doing every time the military is on the roads, they are on the streets, they are protecting this nation, and you are hurling allegations against them without any proof. I think this is not acceptable. But yes, the level of journalism in Pakistan and India, you call yourself a democracy, so-called biggest democracy. This is what the World Press Freedom Index talks, and look at what the international community is reporting about you. And this
Absolutely.
is why in Pakistan's private media is being considered as one of the most independent media. Yes, there may be some pressure which every media has to face.
All right. So Chima Sahab, your opening comments, very well taken. Sushant, Kamar Chima has come armed with facts. He's talking about the Global Press Freedom Index, and he gave some very specific cases about India as well. Now, there are 2 things. One is aberrations which happen, and the second thing is about institutionalization of pressure on journalists and killing of journalists. I'd like your views on this, Sushant Sareen, because Kamar Chima has come fully armed with his facts.
So Gaurav, the problem with Mr. Chima is that, he didn't understand that this program is not about media freedoms or the lack of that in India. You could hold a separate program on that particular thing, and we would be happy to talk about the state of media freedoms and how they can be improved and how, what the problems might be out here. So I'm not going to get into that debate with him. It's a pointless debate. The second thing is that he seems to have accepted the fact that there are certain red lines in Pakistan. I agree, there would be red lines in every other country. But when you cross those red lines, then the departments of government, I don't know why they call it an institution, it's basically a department. The departments of government resort to law. They don't resort to thuggery. They don't resort to gundaism. They don't resort to a criminal action against people who they perceive to have taken pot shots at them. And in the case of Pakistan, you have bizarre. There's a former lieutenant general, quite a clownish guy, who comes on television and he says that these are attacks which are being carried out by a hostile country. To which he was asked a question that yes, if it is a hostile country which is doing it, then how is it in none of these attacks against all the top-notch journalists has a single person been arrested? Why is it that if it is a hostile country, you haven't been able to expose it? After all, you claim that ISI is the world's best intelligence agency. How come the world's best intelligence agency hasn't been able to, expose a hostile country's agenda? So, come down to the brass tacks. Mr. Cheema himself admits that yes, if you cross the red line, journalists will be beaten up. Now, if that is the argument he's trying to make, I don't know what more needs to be said after that. The other problem is that look, in Pakistan, the media has always had problems. If you read some books, Press in Chains or The Press Under Siege, some of them of the 70s vintage, and even later they were published out there on the state of media freedom, there have been problems. And yet Pakistani journalists have managed to, traverse their way through that minefield and managed to bring out reports. I think there is a consensus today, even among the old timers in Pakistan, that the situation which currently obtains in Pakistan is far, far, far more dangerous and far worse than what it was in the past. In the past, at least, you could write between the lines. Now you can't write at all. So you have a case where Hamid Mir, whether you agree with what he said or you don't agree with it, whether you agree with what Asad Tur, I think he's kind of a little foul-mouthed in his shows, but that's besides the point. If you don't agree with him, there is a legal course to be taken. You don't agree with him, at least you will publish a news. Even the news of what Hamid Mir said was blacked out from the media. So when you have a situation like this, then this is clearly far worse than what it was in the past.
All right.
Like I said,
absolutely.
In the past, you could at least write between the lines. Today, you can't write all.
Absolutely. Sure. So, Sushant, I'm going to go to Mona Alam and ask her, Mona, what are these red lines that Qamar Cheema has alluded to, in which Sushant Sareen has very, openly spoken about? There are red lines and there is violence. So, I think what Sushant is saying is that while violence happens in India also against journalists, and it happens in other countries as well. In Pakistan, what I think he's saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Sushant, in Pakistan is pretty institutionalized. I mean, Pemra will send a letter and blank out certain channels. It's not just about Hamid Mir. There will be a formal letter saying that this guy should not be given space. I've seen those letters myself. So, Mona, my question to you is, what are these red lines? What are these red lines in Pakistan? Is it the army? Is it the ISI? Because yes, freedom of speech, as far as saying anything against the civilian dispensation, you can abuse anybody, and that's okay. But we've seen that when it comes to the Pakistan army or the ISI, suddenly people get all this thing, and nobody says the army directly so frequently. It's almost establishment. It's like, they'll always say establishment. That's a very generic term, establishment. Pakistan army is the Pakistan army. And here in India, the Indian army is the Indian army. There is no establishment. But in the Pakistani media, they use the term establishment. What is establishment, Mona, and what are the red lines?
Look, I think it's a good question because we have not been talking about what those red lines are. We talk about red lines, but we don't know what those red lines are. In my opinion, I'd like to testify this with an example. We're talking about Asad Tur, fair enough, Hamid Mir, Matiullah Jan. I, as a journalist working on mainstream media and working with none other than the state broadcaster of the country, I would like to call out for a transparent probe into whatever these incidents have happened, and I want to put an end to whatever these things are happening. I want to know who the culprits are, whether they're from the army or they're someone who's maligning the army, whatever the case is. But I think this should be put to rest, and the only way to do so is to call for a transparent probe and an inquiry into the matter, which I think is underway. And as far as I know, they've made some good headways with Asad Tour's case in particular. Having said that, when I answer your question regarding red lines, I would want to go beyond and quote you certain more examples other than Hamid Mir, Asad Tour, and Matiullah Jan, and Absar Alam. Yes, we forgot him. So Absar Alam is also in the same continuity. We are not talking about Mr. Aziz Memon. We are not talking about Mr. Ajay Lalwani. We are not talking about Miss Shahina Shaheen. Now, all of these are journalists from Sindh and Balochistan. Ajay Lalwani and Aziz Memon were killed. They weren't harassed, they weren't picked, they weren't kidnapped, they were killed. Nothing more, nothing less. For reporting certain facts, presumably. Shahina Shaheen was also killed. She was murdered. She belonged to Balochistan. It's already very difficult to perform journalism in Balochistan. And she had to go through death. Nothing less, nothing more, once again. But I do not hear, I do not see anyone speaking of them, anyone voicing out for them. Why? They did not malign the army. They did not malign the institutions or the establishment in inverted commas. They were reporting on a different set of things and on a different set of matters. Yet they were killed. Why isn't our opposition or our intellectuals or there in India or anywhere else in the world just as keen to pursue their cases? Only because maybe this establishment or the military, as you say, you probably think those are the red lines. But no. Having said that, I will also not put the blame straight away on those people whom they used to criticize, like Mr. Ajay Lalwani or Mr. Aziz Memon were critical of the Sindh government, of People's Party. No, I would not brush away, and I would not, just straight away accuse the People's Party government of having killed those individuals. I think their probe needs to be done just as seriously as anyone else's. Having said that, this red lines terms, I think this is just used and abused because whoever is the one who's being criticized in particular is just presumably actually the blame is presumably put upon the ones who are criticized. And I do a show against the army or I do a show against a particular government, a particular provincial government, and if God forbid something happens to me, any one of you would be very quick to jump the gun and to think that the one I criticized in my previous show or in my previous vlog is the one who's my culprit. But I think that is a presumption in the first place. And once again, I would reiterate, the only way to get away with this presumption and to get over with this blame game is to call for a fair, transparent probe into matters of journalists. I know there is
Absolutely.
no complete press freedom anywhere in the world, but I, as a journalist, would vouch for freedom of press, and this cannot be an excuse, sorry, for saying that, oh, there's no press freedom anywhere in the world, so okay, there's no press freedom in Pakistan too. No. This is a very bogus argument.
So, Bipindra, Mona Alam says that there have been other cases, and you can't presume that, just because somebody criticized, he's the one who got the person killed. She gave examples of certain things happening in Balochistan. Now, my question to you is, Bipindra, that, when we talk about, there is an understanding, at least people like us who follow Pakistan very closely on a day-to-day basis. It's almost like our daily fix, if I may use that word. We read Pakistani newspapers, we watch Pakistani channels because that's what we do for a living now. My question to you is, it's very apparent to the watcher or the viewer that in Pakistan, there could be very many red lines, but one red line which is very stark and very clear is GHQ Rawalpindi. Because we've seen tweets by General Asif Ghafoor where there was a lady journalist, and I forget her name, where he said that, if you have a payment pending from ISPR, I can give you that money. And he tagged that journalist, and I took a screenshot of that tweet, but I don't know where it is. I can't find it. I'm sorry, ma'am, you're saying something?
Sana Bucha.
Sana Bucha. So, right. Sana Bucha. So he said that, which means that he's publicly admitting that ISPR is on a public platform like Twitter. He's saying that, yes, ISPR pays money to journalists to write. And why would an army organization pay journalists to write pro-army stories, right? Now, I want to ask you, Bipindra, Do you think these red lines exist? I mean, you can criticize Imran Khan here. You can say anything to anybody in Pakistan. Politicians might take, some politician might have a hit squad after you or kill somebody in Balochistan or interior Sindh or Punjab or someplace else. But when you criticize the army, that is when the entire state machinery, the so-called establishment, starts hounding you. Do you think that is correct?
Gaurav Arya, thank you so much. Thank you for having me on the show today. First of all, let me start with, appreciating the journalists in Pakistan. Hats off to them for standing up to the power in Pakistan and for, ensuring that there is freedom of press, there is freedom of expression and speech in Pakistan. You are right when you say that there are red lines in Pakistan, particularly the military establishment in Pakistan is quite finicky. And they are too, fragile and too touchy about criticism that comes from the press within Pakistan and outside. And obviously, since journalists in Pakistan are, at the mercy of the military there, they, oppress them and do whatever they want. There was this example of Azad Ali Tur that you keep mentioning, and even Alam mentioned that example. There are CCTV footage of that particular attack that happened on him. But despite that, even a week after that, unfortunately, there has been no action that has been taken in Pakistan. That clearly shows that there are some forces in Pakistan which really do not want criticism at all coming their way. And that is not good for democracy at all. Cheema gave an example of what happened to the Republic TV editor Arnab Goswami. Sorry, Mr. Cheema, that was not perpetrated by a military organization as it has been happening in Pakistan. You need to have your facts correct. There are, of course, politicians, you find them too finicky. That is there all over the world. But military organizations being too finicky and interfering in the press activity, that is not acceptable at all. It is like the Myanmar's military junta, which is acting against journalists in Myanmar today, after imposing a military rule there. Is a military rule happening in Pakistan? I think Cheema should answer that question. Is military rule happening in Pakistan, or is it a democratically elected Imran Khan's government that is running in Pakistan? If he agrees and admits, as he has done today, that it is the military which is running Pakistan, and then I believe there is no discussion at all on this matter. There is no freedom of expression, and that is precisely where the red lines exist in Pakistan today. Let me just read out, what the Press Freedom Index that Cheema referred to mentions about Pakistan. This is the 2021 report. I'm sure Cheema is aware of it. Pakistan media, which have a long tradition of being very lively, have become a priority target for the country's deep state. What is the term that is used? Deep state. It is a euphemism for military and the inter-services intelligence, the main intelligence military outfit, which does all sorts of both, overt and covert activities all over the world. So this is the kind of organization that is basically the deep state that this report mentions. There is a significant degree of control that they exercise, the ISI exercise over the civilian executive. That is what the Press Freedom Index report that Cheema very happily mentioned talks about. What is the influence of the military establishment in Pakistan? No, it cannot stand independent journalism. And it has increased, the attacks have increased dramatically since Imran Khan became Prime Minister in July 2018. There have been many cases of brazen censorship in which the military have used one or other of its method for exercising pressure. This is what the index says. Distribution of newspapers, especially, it is very clear. Cheema has actually resorted to a...
Absolutely.
Absolutely. The red lines actually that Cheema is refusing to agree are clearly the military establishment.
Bipindra, I need to get in a very quick word from Qamar Cheema on this. Qamar Cheema, when I watch Pakistani television, and I'll give you all the time that you need. I'll give you your 2 minutes, uninterrupted. When I watch Pakistani television, all these anchors that I've seen on Pakistani television, not all, I beg your pardon, but a great majority of these anchors, male and female both, they seem to be tripping over each other in terms of justifying what is happening to Hamid Mir. This justification which comes on national television. What happened in India was wrong, and what happened in Pakistan was also wrong. And, we cannot defend those things. But the thing is that, the way they have defended it, saying that, अगर फौज के खिलाफ कुछ बोलेगा तो कुछ तो होगा ही. Alluding to the fact that if you speak against the Pakistan army, a reaction is imminent. I'd like to ask you, Qamar Chima, my question to you is, why is the army, the Pakistan army, such a holy cow? In India, people criticize the Indian army every single day, and nobody from the army even responds. We have ADGPI, which is not the counterpart of ISPR, because the ISPR is a tri-services organization, and the ADGPI is pretty much, Indian army. It's not a tri-services organization, but they keep on saying stuff. Politicians keep on saying things. Journalists keep on saying things. Nobody reacts. There is a formal press conference. They say whatever they want to say. If there is a tweet, you look at the tweets, and I'm giving you specific examples. When General Asif Ghafoor was ADGPI, you could take 100 of his tweets from his handles, either DGISPR or from Peace for Change, his personal Twitter handle, and compare it to the Indian Army's ADGPI. The distinction is, for everybody to see. It's so stark. What do you have to say about that, Kamarji?
Well, I think, Major Saab, the point to understand is that Pakistan's military have a different history in Pakistan, and your military had a different history. We had 3 military coups, and that speaks for itself. Directly or indirectly, some of the segments of the statecraft of the country, they are dealt by the military, because we have fought this long war against terrorism. So that is important. The Afghanistan, how Pakistan has fought this war against terrorism, the military was directly into it. So you just can't compare both the things. One thing. The second thing is that you're talking about Hamid Mir. Obviously, the public opinion and the media fraternity, they have a split opinion about Hamid Mir has said that. People have a right to opinion. People have a freedom of thought, their freedom of expression. Some are supporting his thought, some are against what he has said. So let people talk and let people enjoy that freedom. But let me tell you, sir, you are talking about that what's going on, that, look, in India, a majoritarian political leader can gag media. And in Pakistan, remember one point to understand. Much of the target of the Pakistani media has faced a target from the non-state actors, the militants, the terrorist organizations have killed many journalists in Pakistan. But in your country, just look at how the political parties, the BJP right-wing Hindu nationalists are killing and targeting the media. So don't compare the military with your political...
Chima Sahab, I'm running out of time. I'm going to give 30 seconds to Sushant Sareen, then I'll go to Bipindra and Mona Alam, 30 seconds each. Sushant, your comments on what Qamar Chima said. 30 seconds, please.
Gaurav, give me 1 minute. I have to make just 4 quick, very, very quick points. Number one, Mr. Chima keeps talking about the war on terrorism, what the Pakistan army did. The Indian army has been fighting Pakistani-sponsored terrorism in India for the last 40 years. First in Punjab, then in Kashmir. So, and we haven't behaved the way the Pakistan army behaves, number one. Number two, Mona makes a very fair point when she talks about why haven't the cases of people like that Memon fellow or the Lalwani guy or some of the other cases become cause célèbre? And clearly there are 2 reasons for that. One is that in the case of the 4 prominent journalists based in Islamabad, it obviously grabbed far more eyeballs. It was a far bigger story than the other journalists. But it was a fair point she made. But secondly, what she did not mention was that in both those cases, in the case of Lalwani, not so much, because Lalwani was trying to expose people who were doing forced conversions of Hindus. But since Hindus are untermensch in the Pakistani public discourse of Islamist supremacism, so it's fine, if you massacre a Hindu, it's fine.
I'm running out of time.
One second. This is important. In Memon's case, the people were arrested. Number 3, let us also not be mistaken that, any of these guys who take pot shots at the Pakistan army, which they normally would not take in the past, something has changed out here. But let us not make that mistake that these guys are very brave. This is an internal struggle inside Pakistan. These are not people who are India's friends. These are not people who are well disposed towards us. They have similar kind of hatreds towards us as what the Pakistan army has. But this is their fight. Sure. It has nothing to do with us.
All right. Mona, a very quick 30 seconds from you. I'd like to ask you, how do you see this going? How do you see Hamid Mir's case going? Because very quickly, within 24 hours, people said that the ISI has conducted an inquiry, and regarding Asattur, nothing has happened. They are not guilty. The ISI declared itself guiltless. They said we are blameless. Mona.
Look, I think when you talk about people or certain anchors who were justifying this, whatever has happened, this action against Hamid Mir, even their channel Geo has owned it. They said that they couldn't, own everything that a certain individual attached to that organization says, other than on his program. So yes, they've owned this action. They do say it was because of his tirade against the army. I think that primarily comes in because he was accusing the army of an attack on Asatur. This is exactly how it is. I mean, the investigations are still ongoing. There is no news as to who had executed that attack. I mean, I do not expect army or ISI or anyone who's actually doing or performing that act to go inside, knock on someone's door and say, "Oh, hello, I'm from ISI. I want to shoot you."
Right.
So yeah.
All right.
I think
Mona,
it was
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off because I'm absolutely 30 seconds. Bipindra, my question to you is simple. Pakistani army seems to have an overreaching influence in Pakistan, even in terms of media. They can write a letter, they can tweet, and everything is gagged. Do you think the truth about Asatur and about Hamid Mir will ever come out? 30 seconds, Bipindra. Then I'm closing this.
Gaurav, not a single case of attack on journalists has ever been investigated completely and justice has been done to anybody. For a journalist who's dead in Pakistan, what sort of a justice is going to be delivered to him? You tell me now. It's not possible at all. There will be no justice. There will be no investigation. There will be no outcome from any of these probes that the Pakistani establishment is doing. And in Pakistan, Pakistan is a dangerous place today for journalists. And the media is facing growing censorship attacks and harassment in Pakistan.
Right.
It's threatening freedom of press there. That's the final word.
Thank you, Bipindra. Thank you, Bipindra. And thank you to all my guests from both India and Pakistan. Pakistan at war with itself. This is what we discussed today. And we said that, anybody who speaks against the army in Pakistan comes in for attack, physical or legal or otherwise. But at the same time, the Pakistani panelists said that all is not good with India. Qamar Cheema and Mona Alam both made very valid points saying that all is not well with India. And around the world, this needs to change. The counter to which was, nowhere in the world does the military interfere so much in the media as Pakistan does. Thank you very much for joining us on this very special broadcast of Pakistan at war with itself. Goodbye.